Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Before I start actually um, doing my presentation, there's a big announcement to make also. This presentation is fully approved by my cat. So if you like this cat, you should probably run now and make some donations because obviously that's why we are all here. Now, going back to the presentation. Um, so you all probably remember, or most of you probably remember, those confirmed and unconfirmed algorithm updates in Google towards the end of 22. There was quite a few of them, 5, and obviously they were affecting some websites pretty badly, like any Google updates might. Okay. However, what happened at the end of last year, that was total carnage. We thought 5 was a lot. Google served us, if I counted them correctly, 8. So obviously, proper algorithmic sandwich because Google was stacking up those updates one on the other. I'd like to use one of the potential clients examples who came to us after helpful content update last year, after one of the updates following helpful content update last year, actually, because it's one of those examples of websites that got affected really the most, the harshest. And just to give you some context, niche of this website was martial arts, and to make things worse, the client has just bought the website. The sale finalized on the 10th of August, and as you probably remember, around a month later, helpful content update kicked in, and then another month later, 2 more updates, and then 4 more, and etc. etc. Now, the price that the client paid, this potential client paid for this website was rounding up $147,000. So that's pretty much crazy. A few moments
A
later,
few
as you're
moments
probably
later.
expecting, that happened. Okay, so it wiped out, you can say pretty much 80% of the site. It's still doing pretty well because the traffic is quite good, but it's just terrible what happened. And I'm pretty sure when the client just bought this website, was looking at this, he did feel that he's basically doing a nosedive straight down with his traffic. It's basically like if you bought yourself a Lamborghini and a month later or 2 months later, you're driving this rusty little thing. Okay, now this is to again put this in the context because I actually did quite a few analyses around this website. It didn't end up actually signing this client on, but it's a great example in my opinion. Now, what I like to do when I'm dealing with a situation like this, I have a 3-step process. Very easy. You gather the data, you analyze the data, and then you recover traffic. Simple, right? It's like when you're learning how to draw. You draw a face, you draw a circle, draw a nose, and then full face. Okay. Unfortunately, the reality looks a lot different than that. And what I really truly do, I approach a very broad analysis. So I gather data from, if any clients are affected, obviously from our clients, from some websites that we're observing as competitors. Pretty much anywhere we can, we reach out to other agencies that are friends with us and gather as much data as possible. If you can't do that, because obviously agencies would have advantage in this regard because they have access to more campaigns, you can also obviously go to Twitter, and there's people probably sharing some of the sites. What I like to do is I look at URL level data in Google Search Console if I have access to it, or in any other tools, but URL level data, not the keyword level data, because keywords are a bit problematic, and I'll tell you why in just a second. After that, like I said, I do a deep, broad analysis of a large sample, trying to figure out some similarities in the data that I notice. Obviously, digging in that much data is pretty monotonous. However, I personally like doing it manually because I can behave like a computer. I have this computer pretty much focused brain, and I look at things and just start seeing patterns. However, how much monotonous it is, it doesn't matter because it gives you, in my opinion, much better insights, the broad analysis. After which I aggregate my conclusions. I'm already seeing some patterns, as I said, and learning from that. And one thing that you shouldn't forget, any SEO should not forget, is that you also can learn from those that have won during the update, not just from those who lost during the update. Now, going back to what I said about the URL level data, here's an example of a site that got hit, and we happen to have access to Google Search Console data. If you look at the keywords, there's a whole variety of keywords, and obviously there's a lot of them. The clicks falling off the roof are pretty similar. So if I just looked at keywords, I would probably struggle to actually prioritize that. I would have to cluster those keywords, basically add myself a lot of additional work. Yet, when I just look at the URLs, Google basically did the classification or clustering job for me, because Google clustered it by URL, and this is pretty good for me. And maybe more importantly, you can actually easily see what are your priority URLs that you should be looking at, trying to analyze why they dropped off. And that's just a little tip from me. Another one is, during that analysis, when you're gathering all the data, very helpful view in if you're using Ahrefs is this SERP overview, where you can actually compare SERPs over to one date to the other from the past. And then this view tells you what URLs, what websites have gone up, which have gone down, and which stayed the same. So that's helping you to basically see and maybe pick out more competitors that you can actually analyze, who were either affected in a positive or a negative way, but by that update. To give you an example of, because in my opinion, helpful content update was very peculiar when it comes to all the updates that I've seen over something like 14 years of doing SEO. Um, and this is one of there's actually a couple of examples here. So this is a page of our clients, and I'm just showing it to you, not to for you to analyze the content or anything like this, because obviously there's not much here. However, just visually, if you look at that, you can tell that whatever outranked it, which is this, isn't looking much better overall. There's no images, there's no tables, there's nothing really additional to that. The only thing that I found here that our client didn't have, this is a real dojo, so they probably know what they're talking about when they're talking about martial arts. And well, I was crying seeing that example, but I said, well, yeah, that's fine. This is another example, similar situation, another page that we've analyzed, another URL that was outranked by this. There was absolutely nothing at all on that page. As much as I do agree that our clients, this potential client's website did not look that well, this page only had some small pieces of content, very general, and a lot of additional links on it. So there's pretty much nothing on it. And I was again crying when I saw that. All of that analysis, like I said, very peculiar, very frustrating. I was just screaming about that. But how remember how I said that you also need to learn from sites that have actually gained something during the Google update? This was one of these, and that's another one of these. Obviously, big players. However, we've analyzed a lot more similar to those. We actually found a whole cluster of sites that nothing but gained during helpful content update and the following updates, and most of them belongs to Meredith conglomerate. We found them using this simple query, because signs all of their websites. And what we noticed is they're using all of these sites in the group. They are using some, let's say, modules that they implement and roll out across all of the websites. Here we have obviously some additional EAT information, some user feedback, interactive elements. Obviously, that content goes straight to the clue of what the article is, without any stuffing with weird words that are just there to bump up the word count. That's another example, very good from the EEAT perspective. And when we actually analyze the authors here, I mean, these are most likely real people. I mean, I would doubt they are personas. I heard someone speaking earlier about EAT being way more than personas, which I obviously agree with, but having a real person there, or with great profiles across the internet, findable, that is also, in my opinion, something that can actually contribute to EAT. EAT is a lot of things, but that's one contributing factor. And as much as I would say that, yeah, well, these are big players, and your clients probably don't have Dotdash Meredith's budgets, you can still learn and pick out those little things and build modules around them that you can implement, which we actually did, and that's the revamp, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Just to recap, in my opinion, core algorithm updates or devaluation, if you like, or penalty, which as we used to say, because I don't think it's a penalty, I think it's a devaluation. You got to remember that the whole playing field has shifted. It's not just your sites, the whole algorithm changed. AI got smarter or updated. The weights in the classifier neural network have changed. Everything changed. So it's nothing that is against your website or websites like you in particular. Um, there's no fix really. If the whole thing changed, then obviously you wouldn't be looking at one fix. In the past, we had manual or algo penalties that were for something. Now those broad algo changes like helpful content are devaluations. And like I said, you didn't get penalized, you just got what your site deserves in light of the current algorithm and quality metrics. And to say it in different words, or like really emphasize what it is, it's not any one thing you did or didn't do. It's just basically everything, the whole picture. So you have to, I'm saying that because I want to draw this conclusion that you need to look broader, essentially. Now, when it comes to helpful content update, Google is much more um, vocal about what to do. It gives us very helpful in itself suggestion to create helpful, reliable, and people first content. Easy, right? But together with that, Google throws at us also a bunch of additional things that basically can match up with any website on the internet. And it's actually pretty difficult to come out with one or a few conclusions. I tried doing that. It's going to be broad, but I would summarize everything that helpful content update is about around, first of all, thinking about the user, not the search engine. If you have this approach, you'll probably win, broadly speaking, and in the long term. And secondly, your website should have a clear purpose and very strong value offering. And well, lastly, as we all people are dealing with our time management, you also need to use leverage because you need to prioritize what you're doing on the website. And in our case, this leverage is actually programmatic. SEO revamp. So, what this SEO revamp that we like to call it is, it's a broad HCU, I would say, cemented because it prompted us to finalize this idea. Broad and bold approach to looking at SEO. It's not a remedy for coming out of helpful content update from the last September. We have a lot of revamp projects currently being implemented or already implemented, which haven't picked up any pace yet because those websites are still affected, as far as I know. And I read on the internet and followed on Twitter different things different people say about helpful content update. I am still yet to see a website that has fully recovered or at least recovered significantly from the HCU update. So this isn't a remedy, but it's a strategy that will help you bring the site back hopefully in the long term, and if not, grow it if you've not been affected, which I'll show you a few examples of in a second. Now, in SEO Revamp, we are sticking almost solely to basic optimization, nothing spectacular, just basics cleanup that is blocking you from ranking well. Okay, so if you have no index on the site, obviously you need to remove it. Okay. Um, we strongly focus on finding truly unique value that can be added to the website. It's important that it's being added to the website because we're trying to outgrow what is bad on the site or what is insufficient on the site. So it's added to the website. And obviously, we're optimizing our time. So we're looking for programmatic implementation that is our leverage and expands on the site's topic. And finally, the implementation follows standard best practices and ensures semantic structure because that's what Google needs. Now, off to some examples. I have 3 examples here where we implemented revamp strategies. The first example, the site is in home and garden niche, approximately 2 years old, maybe coming up to 3 at the moment. And what we did, and by the way, basic optimization over cleanup, this is something that will be reappearing in all of these strategies. But because that's needed in every single one, but I'm emphasizing the revamp stuff. For this site, we devised a new content plan. We created new navigation, improved navigation. And for the revamp, I actually built a full AI translation module that grabs all your content, puts it through an AI translator, puts it through an AI analysis tool that relinks every content and finds additional internal linking opportunities. And for that site, we translated around 700 posts that were on that website to Spanish. If you think about it, if you want to show purpose of the site and that this site isn't just to make money off ads and content, well, going international, it's a pretty good thing because that proves that you are serious about your business. After the revamp, we actually did human proofreading because just AI content wouldn't be enough. And something that we plan for the site is actually directory of gardening equipment manuals that we're actually pulling from an API. Now, this is what happened with the site. Campaign started, we had some hiccups, and the traffic wasn't very steady. However, when we translated the content, it all started picking up very nicely. This is just Spanish version of the site across, I think, 2 or 3 months. It gained 11,000 clicks from nothing because obviously we implemented the whole version of the site, and 500,000 impressions, and obviously this keeps growing. So the next example, it was actually a new website that I built to prove the concept. It has AI content, some elements, intelligent interlinking, and AI fact checking. These are AI elements. I'm not going to go through them, but fact checking is pretty clever because it actually finds the claims from the content. It queries search engine to find whether it can confirm or deny those claims, and dumps them all here as fact check. So that's pretty cool. That's how it went. So I think it went pretty well. During that time, you had helpful content update. Actually, didn't do anything, helped that. So that's great. And the last example, which is my favorite, so shame we don't have that much time. It's a sustainability niche. And what we did here in the revamp, we did EAT and HCU elements, but what really moved the needle was the business directory with custom evaluation algorithms for the company. So this is just an example of this page from the directory. We've created like 1,000 of those. This is to show you that without any indexing stimulation, it's just picking up those pages and indexing them fine. And that's how it looked like when we actually rolled this out. And that's from Google Search Console. So it's going crazy, it's going well. Just to summarize, maybe you guys can just take a screenshot of that. I'm not gonna go through it because I really want to take some questions.
Okay. Thank you so
Right.
much.
Thank you very much.
It got more interesting at the end. Unfortunately, we are pretty limited in what we can do. Ashley, and Rad talked a lot about AI also, and some automations and programmatic content. And you are launching this content young company, which is content based, actually, as far as I understand, correct? Uh,
Yes.
do and I know that many people think that content is doomed and AI will take over the world and no one will write anything. So, what do you think about that?
Um, quite a lot. So I think this whole negative connotation with AI should be removed. There's a lot of negativity if you use AI. There's a lot of negativity if you don't use AI, how you use it. I think everyone's still trying to figure it out. But the most important thing that I could say, and this is something that Rad definitely shared kind of and echoed throughout his presentation, is that AI is a tool. Just as we've been given tools like Screaming Frog, Ahrefs, SEMrush, those are all just tools in our toolbox. It is not our full-blown strategy. It is not how we are going to write and produce content for forever. It is literally just think of it like a coworker. And so you can do things and get really creative like Rad did to create AI solutions to streamline your work or offer free things for your consumers in order to get people to go to your content and really engage with your content. But as far as using AI to completely produce your content, that is literally the anti-helpful content update. That is going against what we're being told to do. And I would not be surprised if we go back to the lovely end of spammy link building days and a bunch of people's content starts to get spammed because all they're doing is just using AI to write it. And it's not helpful. It's not reliable. It's not converting users.
Yeah, I would just say one thing about that. I totally agree with you. And me being very pragmatic person, also very wary of what Google can serve us. I I like to say that you have to find a balance between automation, personalization, and then you're going to be good.
Yeah, I agree.
Since Google says they can't understand content, only read text, how does it determine if the new content is for users better than what is there already in the search results?
Well, I think it's a very loaded question, big one to answer because Google Google's algorithm is pretty much amazing. It makes mistakes, but it's very clever in finding different things and different signals and pulling those signals into the mix and basically churning through them. And this is how it does it. I mean, we could probably talk hours about how exactly Google does it, but there's certain elements that it tries to compare. And if someone's outranking you, essentially they're better than you. Google found them better than you.
Which just means
And
you have an opportunity to improve your content, to get more viewers on it, to get more engagement. So always do like Grad said, go and actually look at the search results. Don't just use the tools, like physically put yourself in the user's shoes and see what makes their content different than yours.
Yeah.
and this one is specifically for Rod. Where did you, how or where did you do that fact checking that you showed in example 2, I think? And how did you implement it?
Well, so for that one, we actually built our own system that AI first analyzes the content and picks up the claims that the content is making. Then it searches Google basically for those claims, and then it tries to visit the URLs that are ranking there and analyze whether these claims are confirmed or denied. I will give you a tip that Google has an API that is called fact checking API, which you can implement, but it's still pretty young actually, and it's not that great because it doesn't cover a lot of topics. But that was a custom built module that we did.
And is it computationally loaded and really kind of hard to do? Like it may cost lots of money if you've got something long to check.
Well, I mean, the AI prices are pretty low at the moment, so even if you have like 10,000 words of content, you can probably do it in cents. It doesn't cost that much.
Ashley, do you use AI for writing content?
I don't use AI for writing content. I use it for more of a strategy. So, an example will be like, I have this pillar piece of content that I want to write, and here are the subtopics that I want to create for a fully fleshed out content flow. What other topics would be good to include in this? What am I missing? Or here's a heading structure that I'm thinking of using. Are there any other questions that maybe I'm missing? So, kind of going back and forth with it and using it to make sure that I'm fleshing out my content as much as possible.
And in terms of programmatic, for example, you have to create lots of these pages, and back to this fact-checking process. How do you do that so that your pages don't tank in 3 months?
Well, obviously you take precautions, how to separate, like I said, finding balance between automation and personalization. So that proof of concept website that we created that is fully based on AI, there's a few things that I probably wrote there, but most of them are just AI generated. I think why Google hasn't gotten to that yet, and by the way, I'm pretty much making a statement that it's not the client side, it's a proof of concept side. So when it tanks, it tanks. I think while it's still, because it's still not tanked, because it has all of these additional signals that Google sees as useful. So it doesn't focus on the content that much.
Yeah, Ashley, do you think there may be times when Google will just generate all the content themselves from their database that they scrape, and that's it?
I mean, we do see it all the time when, as a user, I'll go into Google and type for something like what temperature do I need to bake X, Y, and Z in the oven? And it'll give me a bulleted list, and then the temperature will be in there. It's pulling from someone else's content. But then as a user, I then try and make this recipe and I need more information. So I find myself that isn't enough. And then I end up having to click on the search result, going to the page, scrolling down until I get the exact information that I want. So yes, Google is definitely doing that, but you have to rely on the piece of content that you're creating, including everything there is to know about that topic. So when that user does end up needing more information, instead of going back to Google, they go back to your site.
Okay, thank you so much. I've enjoyed your session. We pass to another speaker. Don't go away. Thank you, Rad. Thank you, Ashley, for your generous sharing of knowledge, and it was amazing. So thank you so much. And
Thank you very much.
I
Keep
you.
donating, people.
Yes, keep
Yeah.
donating.